Hello. I wanted to share something that happened to me last year. It may not be the scariest thing you've come across, but being in that moment really scared me and put some things into perspective. It started out as one of those typical weeks. My wife, who at the time was 7 months pregnant, was having a rough time. Her car had broken down and had been in the shop, so we were down to one car, which we were able to make work. Based on our schedules, I worked later than her. I typically dropped her off, and then sometimes I picked her up, or she might get a ride from a coworker, depending on how quickly she needed to get home. She was having a very stressful week and reaching towards the end of the pregnancy. She was just having a really rough time. It was our first kid, so she was pretty worn out and was a trooper throughout the whole thing, even during the difficult moments. On this night, she texted me saying that she was going to get a ride from her coworker since she was running behind, and telling me that it was another rough day for her. She had a larger and longer lunch because there was a corporate outing, which is probably what set her back too, and with how her appetite had been, or lack thereof, I knew she wasn't going to want dinner either. So I had some leftovers and just hung around at home until she got there. But as I sat around doing nothing like a bum, I decided I wanted to do something nice for her instead. With the weeks that she's had, I knew just the thing that would make her smile. She's been obsessed with this gelato from the ice cream shop throughout her pregnancy, and I thought that I would buy her a pint of it. I mean, when you don't want dinner, you typically just want ice cream, right? So I started feeling like a genius and did some things here and there to prepare to go. I killed some time by picking up the living room, swapping out the laundry, and then before I left, I looked at the dishes in the sink. We had a few things in there from dinner, our bowls from breakfast, and then I had my reheated dinner and they hadn't been done yet. I know some people would call that lazy or whatever, but my goal the night before was just making sure the wife was comfortable after having a breakdown at work. So I know that I needed to do the dishes too, and that was the plan, but I wanted to get the gelato before she got home. So I told myself that I would go get it real quick, get home, do the dishes, and then she could come back to a clean house and a lovely treat. Don't worry, I'm not trying to justify my laziness, it is all relevant to the story, I promise. The drive was fine, as it was only about 15 minutes from our house, if that. The place was very colorful and modern, with the back wall full of those little Polaroids and Post-its that anyone could add to. It was always fun to look through them. I got in there, and there was a couple sitting at one of the tables enjoying their time, and one girl behind the counter. I'd seen her there before, a younger girl with short black hair, always very chipper and willing to let my wife sample different flavors, even though she still always got the same thing: pistachio and dark chocolate. Usually we just got the small cups for us, but today, I was spending a bit more to get a whole pint for her, and a little German chocolate cup for myself. The girl working there said that I was a good person, and then asked where my wife was, and we had a small conversation about all that as she rang me up. I paid and thanked her, and then began walking back to my car feeling like I was doing a good thing. As I got in my car and buckled in, my wife texted me again saying that they were just about to leave, and I responded to her. I thought this was even better because it gave me enough time to get back and get those dishes done. That's when all of my plans came crashing down. It took my brain a moment to process what exactly was happening. There was a loud pop, and at first I thought it may have been a car backfiring, but then I heard the scream. I looked around and back towards the big window into the gelato shop, and saw a man standing there pointing a gun at the young girl that had just rung me up. I just remember staring into the building, trying to process if what I was seeing was real. I was just in there. I tried looking around and I could just barely see the top of the couple's head that had been sitting in there, just over the store stickers. I didn't know if anyone was hurt, but the girl looked terrified as this guy was clearly yelling at her. I finally came to and told myself that I needed to do something. I didn't know if anyone else had called the cops yet, but I had. I finally called them and reported what was happening, as I lied across my front seats, not wanting the guy to see me in the car and possibly come out. I stayed in that position for what felt like hours. The gelato now in a bag on my floorboard. Then I heard the sirens. There was another gunshot and a bunch of shouting, and I finally looked up over the dash when I heard them shouting, "Gun." They had cuffed the guy with the gun, and another cop and paramedic were inside the store. And that's when I looked around and saw the ambulance. I was worried that someone had been injured, and based on where the paramedic was, it must have been the couple. I remember being so terrified and feeling so bad for them. They were probably just out on a nice date or enjoying a little treat like myself, only to be shot at. I stayed in my car, not knowing if I should get out and tell someone that I called or just leave. So I rolled down my window and waited for someone to notice me. I did take the time to text my wife that I stepped out, thinking now she would beat me home, kicking myself for the whole thing. I didn't tell her where I was going because it was supposed to be a surprise. I didn't even leave a note. So if I had been in there, or shot even, she would have no idea where I was, and I wouldn't have even been able to answer my phone if she did try to contact me. And that was a terrifying thought for me. Thankfully, one of the cops did notice me, and so I started talking to him. I told him why I was there and that I had called it in. He was trying to be optimistic, I'm sure, but he told me that it was a good thing I got there and left when I had, and said how the other man in there had been shot, but it wasn't life-threatening, which did make me feel a little better. Finally, I got to go home. Now with the gelato, more of a soup, and tell my wife everything that had happened. She freaked out. She cried and she laughed. In that order, too. She was scared to hear that I was sort of involved in the whole thing, and being in her current state, she cried for me, and cried for the kind gesture of getting her the gelato, and then laughed that it would be our luck with the week we were having. But she also made a very good point as we spoke about it. If I had stayed and done the dishes before I went, like I had debated, I may have been walking into that store at the same time that the gunman showed up. I could have already been inside or maybe even walking to the door with him. And that terrified me. A simple change like that, a simple change in the order of things that I did, and I could have been in there and this could have gone a lot worse. And the cops showed up about the time the operator told me they would, so did anyone else even call for help, or was it luck that I would be out there and call it in? It was one of those, I almost literally dodged a bullet. I learned about a week later from the news and things found between local pages and social media that the shooter was the ex of another girl that had worked there. He showed up for whatever reason to try and talk to her, and when the girl told him she wasn't there, he didn't believe her and started yelling. That's what made the other guy that was there try to stand between them, and that's why he got shot. I saw a post from the local news where his fiancée was interviewed and ended up finding her on Facebook, and pieced together more of the story. So, overall, it was a crazy situation that shouldn't have happened. And with just a few choices I made, I nearly avoided it. Because if I was in there, I think I would have done the same thing that man did to protect that young girl. She was too young, too full of life, and I hope that that didn't cause lasting damage to her. So, there you have it. Other than my kid being born, that was probably one of the scariest things I've ever experienced. And if there's anything to learn here, it's that sometimes procrastination can save lives. The dishes can wait. Life is unpredictable enough as it is. Back in the summer of 2022, I was taking a road trip to see my family and some friends back home in Kansas City. The 2 years prior to 22 were a bit of a mess, as many of us know, and I was unable to go home like I usually did for the holidays. But since I couldn't do much other than school and work, I had saved up some money, and I thought I would spend the summer back home. I was going to be driving from Denver by myself, staying with my buddy Marcus, and surprising my parents when I got there. So he got all the updates along the way. Now, I had made this drive a few times, so I had a slight idea of where I was, but that's about it. I have a notoriously bad sense of direction, so I would not be able to make the drive without GPS, but that's what my phone was for. I headed out after I got off work, which was about 5 p.m., and texted Marcus telling him I was on my way. I knew it was going to be late by the time I got in, but that was okay because I was only going to want to crash when I got there anyways. The drive for most of it went fine. I stopped a few times to grab something to eat and use the restroom, but otherwise, I was fine. That was until I was on the Kansas side. I think it was somewhere between Salina and Topeka when my phone froze. I had gotten a text and started responding when it just froze on the message. Nothing I did was working, so I was out my GPS. I had an exit that I was going to have to take soon, per what I remembered the GPS saying, but I couldn't remember the name or how long until I had to take it. So, a bit of panic set in. I just kept driving for a while, thinking I would just take the next exit and try to restart my phone. But what I didn't realize was that I must have been in a spot that didn't have an exit for quite some time. I managed to restart my phone and then did take the next exit that I saw, which put me in this little city that I had never heard of. It started with a B, I think. I pulled into an old gas station, and the only reason I knew it was actually still in service was because of the old man sitting on a bench outside the store, reading a magazine. The lights inside were even off or dimmed. It was strange, to say the least. He looked up at me and we both nodded when we made eye contact, and then I looked back down at my phone to get maps pulled back up. The man then stood up, walked inside, and turned on the lights. I wasn't planning on stopping, but now that he had gotten up, I kind of felt obligated to. I guess that way I didn't look like I was going to rob the place either. I started plugging back in my destination, and was confused when the time didn't add up. I was about at the same time that I was when my phone had locked up. It also had me turning back around, so had I gone too far somehow? I didn't recall missing any other exits either. I figured maybe this would be a good reason to step inside the store and ask the man that worked there. I went in and grabbed a soda, and as he rang me up, he asked me where I was headed. As I explained to him where I was going and what happened, I remember the look of confusion, and maybe even amusement on his face. He said that I was like 45 miles southwest of Topeka. Turns out, I hadn't just missed an exit, I had somehow gotten completely off I-70, and had been following some smaller highway for over an hour without even realizing it. We both had a small laugh. I think he was enjoying this more, though, and he teased that this was exactly why phones/GPSs are not always reliable in small places like that. He tried his best explaining how to get back to I-70, and I thanked him, and then was on my way. I'm sure that his directions were accurate, but again, being directionally challenged, I went back to my phone GPS, and just hoped that it wouldn't freeze up again. I texted my friend telling him that I had something holding me up, not wanting to admit that it was my fault just yet, and that I was back on the road. Back on the road and back on I-70, there were suddenly orange cones everywhere. and cops directing traffic off the highway. It was a complete detour, routing everyone through some back roads to get around whatever was going on, and then back on the highway at an entrance ramp further down. Weird, and a minor inconvenience, but at least I could follow the other cars in front of me, and my GPS was still going. While I was driving, Marcus called me and he sounded a bit concerned as he asked me if I was good. I laughed and told him yeah, and explained how I just had some phone issues that delayed me. I asked why, and he said that it was nothing and that he would see me when I got there. It was a bit weird of him to just call, but I shrugged it off and continued my drive. Finally, I got to Marcus's place with no other issues, and he greeted me at the door like we used to do. After I was in and he showed me where I would be staying, we sat and talked for a bit. That is when he dropped it on me. He asked if I had any troubles on the road getting here, other than my getting lost snafu, and even asked if I saw any accidents. I told him no, but that there were several cop cars on part of the highway, routing people off the exit. And that's when he looked at me all wide-eyed and said, "Bro, you dodged a big bullet." He explained that there had been a massive collision on that same highway. There were a few cars and a semi involved, and 3 people were dead. He said that since he was up waiting for me, he had been notified of some breaking news that mentioned it. That's why he called me. He knew I had been on that highway, and since I mentioned being held up, he was concerned that I may have been involved. But get this, the time of that accident was close to the time that I had texted him about being delayed, which meant that if my phone hadn't frozen, and if I hadn't missed my exit, I very well could have been involved in that accident. And worst of all, I could have died. Instead, that damn phone issue could have saved my life. I was there for the aftermath, was routed around it, and that now all made sense. They had all the lanes blocked for most of the night. We both sat there in that moment of panic and surrealism and then tried to brush it off and move on. It was a little hard to sleep that night with all the adrenaline, but I was okay. I surprised my parents the next day and decided against mentioning the accident, hoping they wouldn't put 2 and 2 together either. But it did make me stop and think about it more. My parents didn't even know that I was coming, so they could have gotten news that their youngest son died trying to come home. That kind of made me feel worse, to be honest. Overall, my trip there turned out great, and it did make me appreciate things a little more, even the unexpected ones, like a phone freezing up. On my way home, I was a little more aware of my surroundings. I paid close attention to any cars around me, and semis made me nervous as hell. I made it back home safely and let everyone know how I was doing any time that I stopped. But I also felt the weird guilt about being relieved. 3 people did die, and here I am grateful that I took a wrong turn. It's a weird feeling, to be honest. I mean, that whole thing made me rethink about getting lost. Maybe all those wrong turns or delays or even little mishaps weren't just mistakes or inconveniences. Maybe they were to keep us safe and to avoid potentially dangerous situations. I just try to appreciate what I have now and tell myself that it's all happening in this exact order for a reason. I'm adding this little intro part because for some reason it feels like it's necessary, because some people seem to not understand that whenever I read Tom K's write-ups, it's not my opinions, they are his opinions. Me reading his write-ups are not endorsements of his opinions, and all opinions stated in this are his, not mine. I know nothing of Hank Williams Jr., unfortunately, or fortunately, and as such, I do not have a personal opinion. However, his story is one that fits this category and definitely deserves to be read, so here we go. To anyone that has listened to music any time since the 1970s, then you've probably encountered the music of the man called Hank Williams Jr. The man, the myth, the legend. And while these days Bocephus may fall on my list of highly problematic people, even I can't deny that the man has built a legend for himself that has surpassed even that of his incredibly famous and beloved father, Mr. Hank Williams Sr. Even the most problematic of people can sometimes have a really inspiring story. Hank Williams Jr. is definitely one of those people. Despite how you feel about some of his beliefs, the story of his life is definitely a very compelling one. It truly has everything one could ask for in a truly great story. And even if it's someone that I may have some mixed feelings about, I cannot ever deny that Junior has definitely earned his right to be problematic in ways. After the things that Bocephus has endured, I think anyone would develop certain quirks and opinions, and that's okay even if not everyone agrees with his views. We have to remember the human side of things. Even people we don't agree with still deserve to have their stories told and heard, and Junior has risen up from the lowest of lows, from death's very doorstep, to one of the most famous and undeniably talented performers of certainly my lifetime. Following the tragic loss of his father in 1953, when Junior was only 4 years old, it wasn't long before he was being groomed by his mother to more or less become a Hank Williams impersonator, taking stage for the first time at the age of 8, singing his father's songs. And by 14, Junior was doing imitation performances, singing songs that were associated with his legendary father. In 1963, Hank Williams Jr. made his television debut on The Ed Sullivan Show, performing several of his father's songs. The following year, he would perform on Shindig, and long before Junior was making some very serious waves in the music business, he began struggling to find his own voice and identity. His mother, Audrey Williams, was overbearing, and she had her own plan in mind for the young star. She wanted to recreate her late husband's success, and she wanted to use Junior to do so. By the 1970s, Junior was completely disillusioned with the way his career was going, and he severed all ties with Audrey. And by the middle of the decade, Junior would be finding that style and sound that would go on to make him one of the most famous country singers in the entire world, and make him the superstar that he's regarded as today. However, there was a tragedy looming for the up-and-coming star that threatened everything he had worked so hard to achieve. In the mid-1970s, Junior began falling into a pattern of drug and alcohol abuse. His music was becoming incredibly successful, and with success came all of its trappings and temptations. In an attempt to refocus his creative energy and bring stability to his troubled personal life, Bocephus moved to Alabama and began performing Southern rock-style music with the outlaw musicians such as Waylon Jennings and Charlie Daniels. In 1975, his album Hank Williams Jr. and Friends was released. This album was the fruits of the collaborations Junior had been pursuing with Waylon and other artists. Before Junior could even begin to enjoy the success of his project, that looming tragedy, that sword of Damocles, that I mentioned before, would find its chance to strike. And when it did, it would leave Hank Williams Jr. fighting for his very life. On August 8th of 1975, Junior was in southwestern Montana along the Continental Divide, scaling Ajax Peak. The snow beneath his feet would give way, and Junior would fall more than 500 feet to the rocks below. The tumble down the mountain left Junior nearly dead, and left everyone else wondering if he would survive. And even if he did survive, would he ever be the same as he was before the accident? The resulting injuries were extensive and severe, and would certainly fall into the category of life-changing. With multiple skull and facial fractures, it would take 2 years, 17 surgeries, and extensive rehabilitation as Junior learned how to walk, talk, and sing all over again. Between the injuries and the surgeries, Junior's face was left disfigured. One of the fractures had caused his right eye to pop out of its socket and resulted in its loss, leaving him completely blind on the right side. Due to the severity of the scars, Junior changed his entire look, adopting the style that is his trademark look, donning a full beard and sunglasses to cover the deep scars of that terrible fall down the mountain in Montana. In the years since, Junior has gone on to success that few people have attained. He continued his collaboration style with other artists to this day, and has performed with artists such as Kid Rock, Merle Haggard, Gretchen Wilson, and as recently as 2024, Post Malone. All in all, Hank Williams Jr., regardless of what people may think of his politics, has recovered from tragedies that would have left a lot of people completely despondent. From the loss of his father at such a young age, through the pressures and stress his mother put on him when she was trying to recreate that career path of her late husband, all the way to his personal struggle with drugs and alcohol, and one of the most harrowing near-death experiences I have ever heard. Not only has he recovered from them, but he's gone on to become one of the most legendary figures in the music industry. Today, there are artists that cite him as their inspiration, and made them want to become a musician. He could also be credited for bringing that eclectic blending of style that so many people, including myself, are such massive fans of. So, this story is going to be a little different, but it still scares the hell out of me, so I wanted to share it. Several years back when I was still in my 20s and still running off of energy drinks and protein bars, I would party a lot. I was big into music, still am, but I would go to just about any concert that I could. I followed all my favorite bands like hawks, and if they were even remotely close, I tried to go to the concert. I even liked going to some of these smaller, local, and cover bands. They were typically just as fun, and if anything, the drinks there would make it fun. This is where I kind of landed myself into some trouble. I'd been sick with the flu and was out of work for almost a week, which completely wrecked my paycheck. It was a little shorter, and I had some unexpected bills come up, so I was cutting it pretty close. But I was able to keep everything afloat. I finally got back to work, and my friend told me that one of our favorite bands was going to be coming to town. I was ecstatic. I hadn't seen these guys in a few years, and they put on one hell of a show. I don't want to say who it was because I think a lot of people would be able to figure out my general location. Anyway, we for sure both wanted to get tickets, but I had to get paid again before I could even think about buying them. So, we waited anxiously to buy the tickets until the following week, slowly watching the amount left. I was getting nervous that they would sell out, but finally, Friday came around, I got paid, so I went in to buy them. That is where the problems began. I went straight through the venue and they said they were sold out. I've run into that before, but typically they weren't actually, and they were just basically holding tickets back for purchase at the door. And so I tried a few ticket places online with no luck. I even physically went to the venue to see if I could just buy the tickets at the box office, and they said that they couldn't sell tickets for a future event. So I went back home empty-handed and upset that we probably wouldn't be able to make the concert. I started checking on some sites that I had used in the past to buy tickets that individuals were selling, and people that couldn't go and now needed to sell them, and of course the occasional scalper. I didn't want to go that path because I know that they were typically overpriced, and I really wanted to see these guys. I hadn't even been to an actual concert in a while due to life just getting in the way. So I made the decision to buy tickets from this person on said site. He claimed that he bought several tickets for him and his friends, but A few people canceled on him, so he was just trying to recoup some of the money they lost. He had a few general admission tickets, but then he also had some for the balcony area to the side. They weren't much more either. I believe $100 each versus about $60, so I asked for the balcony ones, knowing my friend would be super excited for it too. I paid him through PayPal, and he sent me a screenshot of the QR code and code for each ticket. I thanked him, and even told him that if he had another balcony one, that he was welcome to join us since he saved me some stress. And he agreed, saying he'd be happy to. I didn't mind, he just made our entire night, and now I was back to being excited for this concert. So fast forward 2 weeks to the night of the concert. We were both dressed up and looking nice, and standing in the already long line to get in. We finally got to the front of the line, and the girl there first looked at my paper that I printed out with the codes like she was confused. I remember her mumbling something and then trying to scan the code. It clearly didn't capture it. She said that it wasn't accepting it, and she asked me where I bought the tickets from. I explained that it was from an individual trying to sell tickets that he had bought, and then she asked me to show her the confirmation that I got from it. I explained how I paid via PayPal, and he just emailed me the screenshots. She then asked us to stand to the side for her manager, and that's when I started to get concerned. What was wrong with my tickets? Finally, the manager showed up, and I explained everything to him, and he explained that the tickets appeared to be fake. I was shocked and scared. I showed him the payment and the email, freaking out thinking that he may have thought we faked the tickets. He apologized and assured us that he believed us, that we were just victims, but he asked if he could keep the papers that I printed to report to the police about the fakes, explaining how it's all been pretty bad. He even showed us what their codes looked like, pointing out that it was long and almost barcode-like, not the normal square QR code. He then gave us a few suggestions, like trying to fight it with PayPal or the bank to get our money back. Unfortunately, since it was inside, he couldn't let us in, but he said that if we waited around for everyone else to get in, then we could be first to buy any remaining tickets. He also gave both of us a free t-shirt for the venue, which was really nice of him. We thanked him for trusting us, and he went back inside, leaving us to wait and watch all of these other people go in. The line seemed never-ending, and to be honest, that was pretty discouraging. We were both thinking that they weren't going to have any tickets left, and standing there was just making us feel worse, so we decided to just pass on the whole thing. We instead went to a little bar and grill for dinner and drinks, then went to another bar for even more drinks. We blasted the band's music, and even the Uber driver got into it and played it for us. Maybe it was because we were pretty drunk, but he also did get a pretty big tip from us too. We were upset that we didn't get to go to the concert, and that I was out $200, but we ended up making a great night out of it anyways, and we were thankful for everyone involved. We ended up back at my place, and my friends stayed there. The next morning, my phone was blowing up with texts and missed calls. People asking if we were okay, to answer ASAP and call people back. My sister, my mom, a few friends. I was trying to figure out what the heck was with all the worried messages. I started with my sister and said that I was home and asked why, explaining that we didn't go to the concert. While I was responding to my mom, my sister called me. I was not expecting what she told me. She said that there was some kind of fight that broke out at the concert, and someone started shooting people. One person had died, and several more were injured. I was shocked. I told her that we never even got in, and I could hear the relief in her voice. She said that she would send me the news article, and I let her go so I could respond to everyone else. I got up and went to the living room to check on my friend, who was still ungracefully passed out. I woke her up and told her what had happened, and she seemed to have the same reaction that I did, grabbing her phone and seeing all the missed calls and texts. We sat there clearing through all the messages, and I finally got to read the story. It said that there was some kind of altercation, and someone was asked to leave. That's when the person pulled out a weapon. It didn't say what they had, but then another person brandished a gun and began shooting. They shot the guy that first had a weapon, and then shot someone else nearby, which was the person that died. Then several others were shot. It also didn't specify if there was another shooter or if it was all the same guy, but both people that had weapons, or started it, had been arrested. It was even on the news later that night as they interviewed some concert goers. The place looked like a mess. Some people looked terrified and were crying. I was just in shock. We were supposed to be at that very concert, and because we wouldn't even have been on the balcony, if we got in at all, we would have been on the floor, and probably near the back too, since we would have been one of the last ones in. Since the shooting took place close to the door, as the person was being escorted out, we could have been right there by it, possibly shot, maybe killed. It was way too close for comfort, and I had to talk my friend down from a full-blown panic attack, both of us getting that survivor's guilt in a way. We were upset about being out $200 when others were right there in that moment, struggling to survive or get away. Or maybe even grieving over a friend, or a family member, or a partner that they'd lost. Things were a bit weird for us for a few days. We certainly couldn't bring ourselves to listen to their music the days following, and I still felt a twinge of guilt when something negative happened. Like, I had no right to be upset. But over time, we both got better about it. It was an awful thing to happen, and we respected the situation for what it was. But I just became incredibly thankful for how things turned out for us. Getting scammed was potentially a lifesaver for us, and I don't take that lightly now. It did take a while before either of us wanted to go to another concert, but eventually we did. And thankfully, there have been no other incidents like that. Now I just have a handful of people that require me to message them before we go, and after, which I can live with. I won't take these fateful moments for granted anymore. So, that, my lovely friends, was a collection of some close call stories. I struggled with what to call these, because the last time I did close call stories, I titled them near-death experiences, I think? Something like that. Which those ones were more, from what I remember about them, much more close to actual, like, life-ending situations. I can say things properly. I swear I speak English right. I do it for a living. You think I'd be good at it for once. No, not good at it at all. Anyways, those were more like life-threatening situations. These ones are more like the situation could have been life-threatening or was, but ended up not being. So, I don't know. Is Close Call an appropriate title for this? Even if you tell me it's not, I'm not going to go in and change it, but like, was it? I don't know. I'm going to say it's an appropriate title and just move on with that. Yeah. Hopefully you enjoyed these stories. If you did, please do let me know. Be sure to like the video, hit the thumbs up button. If you're new to the channel and liked what you heard and would like to hear more, consider subscribing and turning on the notification bell. You can also leave me a comment, and in the comment section, if you choose to do so, and don't just choose to say hi or tell me what you thought about the stories, let me know what is a food you could eat every day and never get tired of. I'm curious about that. I'm curious about a lot of things. I have a lot of questions on a list that I have put together, but it's not relevant right now. Just that one. What's a food you could eat every day and never get tired of? For me, it is peanut butter. It really is. I could eat peanut butter with every meal, somehow. That wouldn't work with some of them, but still. My point is I love peanut butter. There's no point there. Anyways, leave that, or just leave a comment saying hi. You can also join Patreon memberships, get early access content like this and other things depending on how you sign up. You can go to astheravendreams.com to send in your stories by clicking the big button on that page, or scrolling down and finding all my social media platforms where you can follow me, or all the platforms where you can listen to the podcast in longer format. You can also email me your stories at astheravendreams@gmail.com. All that said, my friends, hope you're having a beautiful week so far. Hope I see you again here very soon. The week just started. It's Sunday, whenever this goes live, so yeah. Anyways, hope you have a great day. Hope I see you again soon. But until then, remember, you are loved, you are valid, you are important, you are the best you that you can be. And the world is a better place with you in it. Much love, and sleep well.